take you through the themes in history of East Africa, and I would like to share this idea with you concerning the history of East Africa. And today I would like us to look at the people link of East Africa, whereby we shall look at different groups of people when they migrated into East Africa. Today we shall start with the LUO migration, and we would like to know who were the LUO and why did they migrate into East Africa. We want to see the cause of their migration and the impact of their migration. In the first place, the LUO are referred to as the River Lake Niletes. Other people, they call them the River Lake Niletes because of the view that they stayed around rivers. So they originated from a place called Bahal Gazelle in southern Sudan, and they are believed to have settled around lakes and rivers. Their migration took place between 1350 to 1500 AD. The LUO, they entered into East Africa through the northern part of Uganda, following the Nile, Albert, and they included the tribes of the Alu, Langi, Acholi, Japadola, and the Luo of the Western Kenya. So the LUO, they are believed to have migrated from Sudan, and they entered into East Africa. When they entered into East Africa, they migrated under the leadership of a man called Olumu. Olumu had sons. One of them was Jipili, Labong, and Tifuli. So Jipili, Labong, and Tifuli were the sons of Olumu. So Olumu, when he was coming with the LUO group of people, they stayed at a place called Pubungu, which is now in the present day Pakwach. So Pakwach became their area of separation or disposal after some conflicts that rose up between the sons, that is Jipili and Labongo. So the reasons to why these people migrated, we shall see. We had the pulling and the pushing factors that made them to move towards the coast of East Africa. So the LUO migration, their migration began in South Sudan, and they moved towards into East Africa, but they are believed to have migrated from a place called Bahal Gazelle, and their migration was between the period of 1350 to 1500 AD. So this is the group of people we are going to look at, and we want to know why did they have interest in East Africa, and we would like to know which effect did they put on Africans, both positive and negative, and then we shall see their course of migration into East Africa. So today we are going to look at the LUO migration into East Africa. So I beg for your ears, and let me hope learning is going to take place. After knowing briefly about the LUO people, where we say that they migrated from a place called Bahal Gazelle, that is in southern Sudan, and they entered into East Africa following the Nile and Lake Albert. So we want to see, why did they migrate into East Africa? So the following are some of the causes of the LUO migration into East Africa. One, the search for water and pasture for their animals. The migration of the LUO was pushed by the need, or by the search for pasture. Pasture, that is grass for animals, and water for both human and animals. So in their cradleland, the LUO, they had faced a problem of drought. So they thought that in East Africa, the case is different, and they thought that when we go to East Africa, it is where we shall get water that will favor both human and animal settlement. So they had to come into East Africa to get animals. Remember, they practice what they call nomadic pastoralism, and they wanted to get water which can sustain human and the animal lives. So that was one of the reasons why the LUO migrated into East Africa. So another one, population pressure. Population pressure also opened the doors for the LUO migration into East Africa. When we talk about population pressure, this is the population increase. The LUO had increased in numbers at their home place. In their cradleland, the population had increased to the extent that they could not feed. So when the population increases, scarcity of land, Land issues increased. Conflicts increased on land. So what they did, they had to come into East Africa where they thought that there is vast and unoccupied land. So population pressure also pushed the Luo to come into East Africa where they thought they would find peace. Another internal conflict within the Luo themselves. The Luo themselves used to fight each other internally. When we talk about internal conflict, those are the conflicts within. So the Luo themselves, inside them, as the group, they had conflicts. So they were looking for a conflict-free area, and that was East Africa. So this made them to migrate into East Africa. Oh, this made their migration to East Africa inevitable. We have the external conflicts. The external conflicts, these are the conflicts that took place outside the Luo land. External, these are the conflicts they fought outside, not internal, but they are external. The word external is something out. So the Luo had the conflicts, they had enemies, pressure from the outside groups. Other groups used to attack them. So what the Luo did, they came into East Africa where they thought that they would find peace. Another on harsh climate from their cradleland. Their cradleland, the Luo, they lived in a place which was having high temperatures. Temperatures were increasing. Remember, we said they were coming from Sudan. Sudan is a place which is full of deserts. So the Luo are living in a place which was having unfavorable climate. Climate which could not favor human and animal settlements. So they thought that in East Africa, when we go to East Africa, when we move into the interior of East Africa, we shall find there places which are having cool and favorable climates that will at least sustain both human and animal settlement. So in southern Sudan, the temperatures there were high. So what they did, they moved into the interior of East Africa, thinking that they will find there places which are having cool temperatures that can favor human and animal settlement. Another one, love for adventure. Some Luo people were interested more in adventure. The word adventure, they loved moving and touring, exploring. They wanted to see new things. So we should not say that all the Luos migrated because of pressure at home, internal conflicts and etc. Some migrated because they wanted to explore. They wanted to see new things. They want to make adventure, to see different things in East Africa. So lastly, on the reasons to why the Luo migrated, though there are many, search for fertile soils. Their soils had lost fertility, and they thought that if we move into the interior of East Africa, maybe there is fertile soil that can support agriculture. So the Luo migrated because of many factors, but I beg to stop here and we make more research about more factors that pushed the Luo to migrate into the interior of East Africa. But fertile soils, love for adventure, harsh climate, external conflicts, internal conflicts, population pressure, and search for water and pasture were some of the reasons to why the Luo migrated into the interior of East Africa. I'd like us to see, when the Luo migrated into East Africa, which effects did the Africans face after the Luo migration into East Africa? After the Luo migration into the interior of East Africa, or even the entire East Africa. So the Luo led to land conflicts into East Africa. Remember, when the Luo migrated into East Africa, the population increased. And that means that the land which was occupied by few Africans, they had to be shared by the Luo. And time came, and the land for one to settle on a particular land, he or she had to first fight for that area. So it increased the conflicts over land into East Africa. The Luo came, when they came into East Africa, they occupied those areas that they thought they thought that they are bare. They could look at the areas which were empty. However much these areas were empty, but they belonged to Africans already, to some people. So the owners of these lands had to fight, and at the same time the Luos had to fight for those areas, to acquire them. So this caused the pressure over land, and it increased tension in East Africa as people were fighting for land in order for them to occupy. Another one, we got intermarriages in East Africa. Intermarriages, the Luo intermarried with the people they found in the interior of East Africa. When they came, they decided to intermarry with them. For example, when they found the Baganda, like the Banyankole, Like the Banyala, I'm giving an example. The Luo men married the Baganda, the Luo men married the Banyankole, the Luo men married the Basoga. So that gave birth to new races. That's why we shall look at the Japadola and etc. So it gave birth to new groups of people. Intermarriages, the Luos married African groups that they found in the interior. 3, it led to the formation of new kingdoms. So when the Luo came, the formation of states started. New states were formed. For instance, Buganda Kingdom, Bunyoro Kingdom, and other kingdoms were formed. So the Luo came with the new system of administration. That is under monarchism or under kingdoms. These kingdoms had to be having a king. Those states that had no kings were called stateless kingdoms. Sorry, stateless societies. But kingdoms were having kings on top of their apex. And a good example is Buganda and Bunyoro. So when the Luo migrated into East Africa, or the interior of East Africa, they came with the new system of administration, that is kingdoms. Another one, the Luo introduced the petty names. Petty names, for example, the Akiki, the Aboli, in bracket, they call it Empako. Those are so common in Batoro. So they came with such petty names in East Africa or in the interior of East Africa that were even given to the groups of Africans. The Luo introduced the new crops such as millet, sorghum, guineas, or groundnuts. So these crops were adopted by the people or by the groups they found already in the interior of East Africa. So the Luo coming into East Africa led to the introduction of new crops. These crops were later on made commercial crops altogether. They used to sell them or to exchange them. For example, millet, sorghum, guineas were exchanged by the Africans during trade. Lastly, however there are many, the Luo introduced the new economic activities in East Africa like the nomadic pastoralism. So many African groups embarked on nomadic pastoralism in East Africa. They left other things, like some people left digging and they went to nomadic pastoralism. So it made them to at least to be credited into East Africa. So we credit the Luo for having introduced new economics activities. The Luo introduced the games. Many games were introduced by the Luo people. They created the what they call new races after intermarriages. So those are the some of the effects of the Luo migration. However, effects are divided into two: the negatives and the positive consequences. So those are the some of the effects of the Luo migration into East Africa. Of the Luo migration into East Africa, the Luo are believed to have migrated from a place called the Bahr el Ghazal, that is during the 15th century, and they moved southwards following River Nile under the leadership of a man called Olumu. Olumu was the leader of the Luo, and he had many sons. One of them was Tifuli, Jipili, and Labong. So, however, around the 16th century, the Luo settled at a place called Pubungu. So as they were moving, they reached a place called Pubungu, following Lake Albert, and Pubungu is now the present-day Pakwach. Therefore, Pakwach became their area of disposal. It is where Olumu's sons got conflicts. That is between Jipili and Labong. It is where they got conflicts, and they they ended up sprinting into two groups, each group following its own route. Olumu's sons got conflicts and separated at Pubungu, sprinting into two groups, one following Labong and another group following Jipili. Jipili's group moved westwards of Lake Albert, and there and here they intermarried with the groups of people like the Lendu, Okembo, and the Madi to form the Alu, the presently known, they are present now found in Nebi district. Labong's group moved southwards and they settled at Pawil in bracket Chope in the northern Bunyoro kingdom. However, one group under Labong remained at the Chope, moving southwards to come into contact with the Bachwezi to form the kingdom or the dynasty called the Luo Binto dynasty. So the Luo migration into East Africa started with their movement from Bahale Gazelle, and they met at a place called Pubungu, where they ended up sprinting into two groups, one group following Labong, another group following Jipili, but it was after the conflicts that rose up between the two brothers. So Labong left Chope and moved eastwards to form Acholi people, presently found in Gulu and Lila. Another group moved to eastern Uganda in Budama area, and they gave birth to the present Japadola, found in Tororo district. However, some of the Luo continued into western Kenya, such as the Jok, the Jokowiri, and they settled in the Lamoji hills of the Nyanza province.